The morning sky above Terra Prime blazed with hues of orange and red as yet another hostile vessel pierced through the orbital defenses. Ambassador Elyra pressed her face against the reinforced window of the government building, watching as shards of metal rained down like deadly meteors. The sight churned her stomach. Just 3 weeks ago, this very sky had been a clear, tranquil blue, dotted only by peaceful transport ships and the occasional patrol vessel. Now everything had changed. The Zorath Empire had arrived without warning, without demands, and without even a declaration of war. Their massive, black ships had simply materialized at the edge of Elyra space and begun obliterating everything in their path. "Ambassador, we need you in the communications room," said Alex, her human assistant. His face was pale, and she could see the fear in his eyes. Alex had been working on Terra Prime for 2 years as part of a cultural exchange program. He was supposed to go home next month. Now, none of them knew if there would be a home to return to. Elyra followed Alex through the corridors of the government complex. Emergency lights flashed red along the walls, and she could hear the distant sound of explosions. The Zorath ground forces had landed on the northern continent yesterday, and the reports coming in were grim. The communications room was a hive of activity. Dozens of Elyrian technicians worked at their stations, sending messages across the galaxy and coordinating what remained of their fleet. Director Thorn stood at the center of it all, his usually neat appearance now disheveled from 3 days without proper sleep. "How bad is it?" Elyra asked. Thorn turned to her with tired eyes. "We've lost contact with 7 outer colonies. The defense fleet at Star Station was completely destroyed this morning. Our remaining ships are falling back to protect the core worlds, but we can't hold them for long." Elyra felt her heart sink. The Elyrian Confederation had enjoyed peace for over 200 years. Their military was small, designed more for patrol duties and disaster relief than actual warfare. They had always believed that their neutral stance and peaceful nature would protect them from conflicts like this. "What about the other species? Have any of them responded to our request for help?" Elyra asked. Thorn nodded toward one of the communication stations. "The Altarians have promised to send medical supplies. The Centauri Union is preparing refugee ships to evacuate civilians from the border worlds. The Helix Collective has offered to provide intelligence about Zorath fleet movements." "That's something at least," Elyra said, though she knew it wouldn't be enough. Medical supplies and refugee ships were important, but they needed military assistance. They needed ships, weapons, and soldiers willing to fight. "There's more," Thorn continued. "The Galactic Council has condemned the Zorath attack and imposed economic sanctions. Several major species have cut off trade relations with the Empire." Elyra almost laughed, but there was no humor in the situation. Economic sanctions would take months or years to have any effect. The Zorath Empire could finish conquering the Elyrian Confederation in a matter of weeks at their current pace. A D-18 explosion shook the building, causing dust to fall from the ceiling. The lights flickered for a moment before the backup power systems kicked in. Through the window, Elyra could see smoke rising from somewhere in the city. "We need to send another broadcast," she said. "A stronger message. Make it clear how desperate our situation is." Thorn nodded and gestured to one of the technicians. Within minutes, they had prepared a new transmission. Elyra stood before the recording device, trying to compose herself. She knew that billions of beings across the galaxy would see this message. She had to make them understand. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I am Ambassador Elyra of the Elyrian Confederation. As I speak to you now, our worlds are under attack by the Zorath Empire. They have destroyed our outer colonies and are advancing toward our core systems. Our people are dying." She paused as another explosion echoed in the distance. "We have always been a peaceful civilization. We have never sought conflict with any species. We have contributed to galactic trade, science, and culture for centuries. We have helped others in times of need. Now, we are the ones who need help." The words came from her heart now, not from any prepared speech. "We are not asking for your soldiers to die for our cause. We are asking for whatever assistance you can provide, ships, weapons, supplies, anything that might help us survive this assault. The Zorath Empire seeks to destroy everything we have built everything we are. Please, if you have ever believed in justice, in protecting the innocent, help us now." The transmission ended, and Alara felt drained. She had put everything into those words, all her hope and desperation. Now they could only wait and see if anyone would answer. Over the next several hours, responses began to arrive. Most were similar to what they had already received. The Vidian Republic would send food supplies. The aquatic worlds offered to take Elyrian refugees. The Iron Brotherhood promised to share intelligence about Zorath tactics. Then a message arrived that caught everyone's attention. It came from human space, from a planet called Earth. The transmission was brief and formal, lacking the diplomatic language that usually filled such communications. Message received and understood. Fleet en route. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. That was all. No details about the size of the fleet or what kind of assistance they would provide. No formal declarations or political statements. Just a simple acknowledgement and a promise. Alex, who had been helping coordinate the incoming messages, looked puzzled. "That doesn't sound like the diplomatic corps," he said. "Human government messages are usually much longer and more detailed." Thorn studied the transmission data. It came from Earth directly, but the routing suggests military channels. Perhaps they are sending a small patrol fleet to help with evacuations. Alara felt a spark of hope. Humans were known to be capable fighters, though their military was not large compared to the major galactic powers. Even a small human fleet might be able to buy them some time, or at least help evacuate civilians from the most threatened worlds. "How many ships do you think they might send?" she asked Alex. Alex considered the question. Humans have perhaps 50 major warships spread across all their territories. If they can spare some from patrol duties, maybe 8 or 10 ships. It would be a significant commitment for them. 8 or 10 ships would not be enough to stop the Zorath assault, but it was more than anyone else had offered. For the first time in days, Alara allowed herself to feel a small measure of hope. Outside the window, the sky continued to burn as enemy ships pressed their attack. But somewhere in the darkness of space, help was coming. Maybe not enough help, but it was something. The humans were coming. General Marcus Thorne stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Zorath Dreadnought, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. Red icons representing his fleet surrounded the blue dots of Elyrian worlds, like predators circling wounded prey. The conquest was proceeding exactly as planned. "Status report," he commanded, his deep voice carrying the authority of someone who had crushed dozens of civilizations. "The fourth outer colony has surrendered, General," reported Captain Vex, his tactical officer. "Minimal resistance. Their defense platforms were destroyed within 6 hours." Thorne nodded. The Elyrians fought bravely enough, but they were simply outmatched. Their small patrol ships and outdated weapons were no match for Zorath military might. It was almost disappointing how easy this campaign had become. "What news from the core worlds?" he asked. "Long-range sensors show they are pulling back their remaining fleet to defend Terra Prime and the industrial centers. Approximately 200 ships, mostly light cruisers and frigates. 200 ships. Thorne commanded over 1,500 vessels in this campaign alone, with reinforcements available if needed. The Elyrian fleet would last perhaps a day against his full force. "Any response from the Galactic community?" he asked. Captain Vex consulted his datapad. "The usual economic sanctions, diplomatic protests, offers to evacuate civilians. Nothing that will affect our operations. A few species have sent small aid packages, but no military assistance of note." This was always how it went. The galaxy was full of civilizations that talked about justice and protecting the innocent. But when it came time to act, they found excuses. They were too far away, too busy with their own problems, too afraid of Zorath retaliation. "There is one item of interest," General Beeks continued. "Our intelligence network picked up a transmission from human space. They appear to have responded to the Elyrian request for assistance." Thorne turned from the tactical display. "Humans, the species from those small worlds near the rim." "Yes, General. They sent a message saying they were dispatching a fleet." For a moment, Thorne felt a flicker of concern. Then he remembered what he knew about humans. They were a young species, barely 3 centuries into space travel. Their territory consisted of perhaps 30 systems, mostly small colonies and research stations. Their military was tiny compared to the major galactic powers. How many ships are they sending? Thorne asked. Unknown, General. The message was brief. Our analysts estimate they could spare perhaps a dozen vessels, at most without leaving their own territory defenseless. Thorne relaxed. A dozen human ships would make no difference to his campaign. If anything, it might provide his crews with some additional target practice. Continue the advance. We will reach the core worlds within 48 hours. Meanwhile, across the galaxy in the Sol system, something unprecedented was happening. The human homeworld of Earth buzzed with activity as massive cargo ships launched from orbital shipyards, carrying supplies and personnel to a gathering point near Mars. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching dozens of screens showing fleet movements across human space. Ships were converging from every corner of human territory, leaving only skeleton crews to maintain basic security. Report from the Europa Alliance. Admiral, said Commander Davis, her aide. They have committed 67 vessels, including their entire heavy cruiser squadron. The Mars Colonial Union. 84 ships, including their new carrier battle group. They are pulling ships from the asteroid mining protection fleet. Admiral Stone nodded, making notes on her tablet. The response had been immediate once the call went out. Every human government, from the largest nations to the smallest independent colonies, had agreed to contribute what they could. What about the outer colonies? Even the frontier settlements are sending what they have, she said. Captain Miller is bringing 12 patrol boats from the Tau Ceti system. The research station at Wolf 359 is sending their survey ship with a volunteer crew, Commander Davis replied. The scale of the mobilization amazed even Stone. Humans had fought among themselves plenty of times in their history, but when faced with an external threat to innocent civilians, old rivalries disappeared overnight. Total count so far? Admiral Stone asked. Commander Davis checked his master list. 2,843 vessels confirmed. We are still waiting for final numbers from several systems. Stone felt a grim satisfaction. The Zorath Empire was about to learn something about humanity that no other species had discovered yet. Humans might fight each other, but they stood together against bullies. Any word from the supply convoys? She asked. Marine transports are loading at 17 different staging areas. The cargo ships carrying ammunition and repair supplies should reach the assembly point within 18 hours, Commander Davis replied. Stone turned to look at the main display, which showed the growing human fleet near Mars. Ships of every size and class filled the space around the red planet. Ancient frigates that had seen service in the colony wars floated next to sleek new destroyers fresh from the shipyards. Civilian cargo haulers converted for war flew alongside military transports. Admiral, said Lieutenant Roberts from the communications station, we are receiving a transmission from the Elyrian ambassador. She is thanking us for our promised assistance and asking for details about our fleet size. Stone considered this. The humans had deliberately kept their response vague. No one in the galaxy knew the true size of their military because they had never needed to deploy it all at once. Tell her we will provide whatever assistance is needed. No specifics, Stone ordered. Yes, Admiral, Lieutenant Roberts replied. Stone returned her attention to the fleet reports. The numbers kept growing as more ships arrived at the assembly point. What had started as a rescue mission was becoming the largest military operation in human history. Back in Zorath space, General Thorne was reviewing the final plans for the assault on the core Elyrian worlds. His fleet was already moving into position, confident in their overwhelming superiority. General, called Captain Vex from his station, we are picking up hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts approaching from the direction of human space. Thorne looked up from his tactical plans. How many contacts? He asked. Vex studied his sensors, frowning. The readings are unusual, General. There appears to be significant interference. Are they military vessels? Difficult to determine at this range. The hyperspace distortion suggests a small fleet, perhaps 15 to 20 ships. Thorne nodded, unsurprised. It was about what he had expected from the humans. A token force to make themselves feel better about helping, but nowhere near enough to affect the outcome. Continue with the assault plan. When the human ships arrive, we will deal with them quickly and get back to business. The Zorath fleet pressed forward toward the Elyrian core worlds, unaware that humanity was about to demonstrate why they had never lost a war once they decided to fight it. The hyperspace alarm screamed across every ship in the Zorath fleet. General Thorn rushed to the bridge of his flagship, expecting to see the small human relief force that his sensors had detected hours earlier. What he saw instead made him stop dead in his tracks. The space at the edge of the Elyrian system was tearing open. Not the normal small rifts that mark single ships or small squadrons dropping out of hyperspace, but massive tears in reality itself. The first ship that emerged was enormous, a human dreadnought twice the size of anything in Zorath intelligence files. Then came another and another. "Captain Vex, report," Thorn barked, trying to hide the shock in his voice. Vex stared at his instruments, his face pale. "General, I am reading massive hyperspace distortions across the entire sector. Multiple fleet formations are dropping out of jump." The view screen filled with human warships of every conceivable design. Massive battleships with weapon arrays that bristled like metal thorns. Sleek destroyers that moved with predatory grace. Heavy cruisers whose armor plating gleamed under the system's star. Carrier ships so large they looked like floating cities. "How many?" Thorn demanded. "Still counting, General. Current tally is over 800 vessels and climbing." 800? Thorn felt ice in his stomach. His intelligence reports had estimated the entire human military at fewer than 200 major warships. Where had all these ships come from? The answer came as more formations continued to arrive. Ships bearing the markings of dozens of different human governments and organizations. Military vessels flew alongside converted civilian craft. Ancient frigates that looked like museum pieces formed up next to cutting-edge battleships that had never been seen before. On the bridge of the human flagship Defiance, Admiral Stone watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The deployment was proceeding flawlessly. 3,027 ships had made the jump successfully, forming the largest battle fleet in known galactic history. Communications. "Open a channel to the Zorath flagship," Stone ordered. "Channel open," came the reply. Admiral Stone stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's determination. "Zorath Fleet, this is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the United Human Coalition. You are hereby ordered to cease all hostile operations against the Elyrian Confederation and withdraw from this system immediately." On his bridge, General Thorn felt his confidence cracking. The human fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation. Ship after ship extended beyond the range of his sensors. His own force of 1,500 vessels suddenly seemed inadequate. "Human Admiral," he replied, forcing authority into his voice. "I am General Marcus Thorn of the Zorath Empire. You are interfering in an internal matter. Withdraw your forces or face the consequences." Stone's response was immediate and cold. "General Thorn, you have exactly 1 hour to begin your withdrawal. After that time, we will consider any Zorath vessel in this system to be a hostile target." The transmission ended, leaving silence on both bridges. Captain Vex leaned close to Thorn. "General, our long-range scanners are detecting additional human formations still arriving. Current count is approaching 3,000 vessels. 3,000 ships." Thorn had never faced odds like this. Even the Zorath Empire's largest campaigns rarely involved more than 2,000 vessels, and those were spread across multiple star systems. "What are your orders, General?" Vex asked. Thorn stared at the tactical display. His military training warred with his political ambitions. A retreat would damage his reputation within the Empire, but a battle against such overwhelming odds could destroy his entire fleet. On Terra Prime, Ambassador Ilara stood in the communication center, watching the sensor readings with disbelief. Alex, her human assistant, was equally stunned. "I do not understand," Ilara said. "You told me humans might send 8 or 10 ships." Alex shook his head, staring at the display. "I had no idea. No one did. This is every human ship in space, plus some I did not even know existed." Director Thorne joined them at the sensor station. The readings show over 3,000 human vessels. This is larger than most species' entire navies. But how? Ilara asked. Alex was quiet for a moment, thinking. We are not one government, he said slowly. We are dozens of nations, hundreds of colonies, thousands of settlements. Each one has its own ships, its own defenses. I think they all came. The scope of it was staggering. Every human colony, every research station, every mining outpost had contributed what they could. Ships that had been patrolling trade routes, exploring distant stars, or defending asteroid miners were now part of the largest rescue fleet in galactic history. Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Stone received reports from her formation commanders. The fleet was deploying into battle formation, a complex dance of thousands of ships taking their assigned positions. Admiral, said Commander Davis, we are receiving a transmission from the Elyrian government. Ambassador Ilara wishes to speak with you. Put her through, Stone ordered. The view screen filled with the image of a tired but hopeful Elyrian diplomat. Admiral Stone, I am Ambassador Ilara. On behalf of my people, I must ask why. Why has humanity sent such a massive force to help us? Stone considered the question. How could she explain humanity's response to injustice? How could she describe the anger that had swept through human space when news of the Zorath attack spread? Ambassador, when someone calls for help, humans answer. When innocent people are threatened, we do not send just enough aid to make ourselves feel better. We send everything we can. The simple honesty of the statement hung in space between them. On the Zorath flagship, General Thorne made his decision. 3,000 ships was not a force he could defeat. Not without massive reinforcements that would take weeks to arrive. The Elyrian colonies were not worth the destruction of his entire fleet. Captain Vex, signal all ships. We are withdrawing to the system edge. General, you heard me. Full withdrawal. We will regroup and request additional forces from High Command. As the massive Zorath fleet began its retreat, Admiral Stone allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The bullies were backing down. Faced with opponents who would not be intimidated, all ships maintained formation. We will escort the Zorath fleet to the system boundary and ensure they do not return. The human armada moved forward like a tide of metal and determination. 3,000 ships united in a single purpose. Across the galaxy, other species watched their sensors in amazement as humanity demonstrated what happened when they decided to fight a war. The Zorath Empire was learning what the galaxy was about to discover. Humans did not fight to win points or gain territory. When they fought to end the war completely. General Thorne thought he had made the right choice by withdrawing. He was wrong. The human fleet did not simply escort the Zorath to the system edge as expected. Instead, Admiral Stone ordered her forces to pursue the retreating enemy, keeping pace with them as they tried to regroup at their staging area in the neighboring system. Admiral, Captain Vex reported from his station aboard the Zorath destroyer's edge. The human fleet is maintaining formation behind us. They are not breaking off pursuit. Thorne studied the tactical display. The human ships moved with a precision that impressed him despite the circumstances. 3,000 vessels maintaining perfect formation, while traveling at high speed, was no simple task. Distance to their supply base at Kepler Station, 18 hours at current speed. General Thorne nodded. Once they reached Kepler Station, he would have access to reinforcements and supply ships. The humans would have to either attack a fortified position or give up their pursuit. But Admiral Stone had no intention of letting the Zorath escape to regroup. She had studied every report about Zorath military tactics, and she knew they would use any respite to bring in more ships and launch another attack. Signal all formation commanders, she ordered. Prepare for Operation Hammer. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, leader of the human fighter squadrons, received his orders with grim determination. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. While the main fleet engaged the Zorath warships, fighter craft would punch through their lines and destroy their command vessels. All pilots, this is Hayes. Remember your training. These ships have been attacking innocent civilians for weeks. Today we show them what happens when they pick on people under human protection. The space around Kepler Station erupted into chaos as the two fleets clashed. Zorath ships, expecting a cautious engagement, found themselves facing an enemy that fought with frightening intensity. Captain Miller, commanding the destroyer Relentless, watched his tactical screen as enemy fire lit up his shields. All weapons, continuous fire. Do not let them reorganize. The Zorath captain of the cruiser Darkspear had fought in a dozen campaigns, but he had never seen anything like this. Human ships pressed their attacks with a ferocity that bordered on madness, closing to point-blank range where their superior armor and weapons could do maximum damage. "They are not fighting like a civilized military," he reported to his admiral. "They attack like wild animals." But it was not wildness. It was calculated aggression, born from humanity's long history of warfare. Every human commander knew that in battle, hesitation killed more soldiers than enemy fire. The time for diplomacy had passed. Now was the time for violence. Commander Blake led a squadron of human heavy cruisers against the Zorath supply convoy. His ships moved in perfect coordination, concentrating their fire on one target at a time until it was destroyed, then moving to the next. "Target the ammunition ships first," he ordered. "Cut off their ability to fight." The Zorath convoy tried to scatter, but the human ships anticipated every move. Blake had studied recordings of previous Zorath battles, learning their patterns and weaknesses. When the enemy tried to form a defensive screen, his ships split into hunting packs that attacked from multiple angles. On the main battle line, Admiral Stone watched the engagement unfold. The Zorath fleet was larger and more experienced, but they were fighting an enemy they did not understand. Human military doctrine emphasized overwhelming force and rapid decision-making. Every ship captain had been trained to act independently while maintaining overall coordination. "Admiral," reported Commander Davis, "the Zorath flagship is attempting to disengage from the main battle." Stone smiled coldly. "Signal the Yamato and Enterprise battle groups. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. We need General Thorne alive." The two human battle groups moved to intercept the fleeing flagship, like wolves cutting off a wounded deer. The Zorath destroyer's edge found itself surrounded by human warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than Zorath intelligence had believed possible. General Thorne watched his fleet being systematically destroyed around him. These humans did not fight like any civilized species he had encountered. They showed no mercy, offered no quarter, and seemed to take personal offense at every Zorath ship that remained functional. "General," Captain Vex said, his voice barely steady, "we have lost contact with over half our fleet. The humans are not just defeating us. They are annihilating us." The difference in fighting philosophy was becoming clear. Zorath military tradition emphasized controlled aggression and calculated risks. Battles were fought to achieve specific objectives with minimal losses. But humans seemed to fight with the goal of completely destroying their enemy's ability to continue the war. Lieutenant Commander Hayes led his fighter squadron through the burning wreckage of Zorath ships, hunting for survivors who might escape to fight another day. His pilots showed no mercy to enemies who had been bombing civilian targets for weeks. "Red Leader, this is Red 7. I have 3 Zorath fighters attempting to flee toward the jump point." "Understood, Red 7. All fighters, no enemy escapes. We end this today." The human fighters moved like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks through a combination of training and shared purpose. Each pilot knew that every Zorath ship that escaped might return to attack more innocent civilians. Back on Terra Prime, Ambassador Ilara watched the battle reports with amazement and growing concern. The humans were not just winning. They were completely destroying one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. "Alex," she said to her human assistant, "is this how your people always fight?" Alex was quiet for a long moment, watching the tactical display. "Only when we think it is necessary," he finally answered. "Humans learned long ago that some enemies cannot be reasoned with. When we fight to make sure the war ends." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, the Zorath fleet had ceased to exist as an effective fighting force. Of the 1,500 ships that had attacked the Elyrian Confederation, fewer than 200 remained operational, and most of those were damaged beyond immediate repair. General Thorne sat in his command chair, surrounded by sparking consoles and the smell of smoke. His flagship was crippled, his fleet destroyed, and his career finished. The humans had achieved in one battle what the Zorath Empire had thought impossible. Admiral Stone's voice crackled over the communications channel. General Thorne, you will surrender your remaining ships and submit to human custody. Any attempt to continue hostilities will result in the complete destruction of your fleet. Thorne looked around his ruined bridge. His officers waited for orders that would never come. The war was over, and humanity had won in the most decisive way possible. 3 days after the battle, General Thorne sat in the detention cell aboard the human flagship Defiance. The room was clean and comfortable, nothing like the brutal prison facilities used by the Zorath Empire. His captors had even provided him with books and access to news broadcasts. What he read in those broadcasts changed everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. The destruction of his fleet had sent shock waves across known space. Every major civilization was analyzing the battle recordings, trying to understand how humanity had assembled such a massive force so quickly. Militaries were already rewriting their textbooks on space warfare. Admiral Stone entered the detention area, accompanied by 2 guards. She carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had just reshaped galactic politics with a single battle. General Thorne, she said, taking a seat across from him, how are you adjusting to your circumstances? Thorne studied her face, looking for signs of the cruelty he expected from a conqueror. Instead, he saw only professional courtesy and perhaps a hint of pity. Better than I deserve, Admiral. Your people have treated me fairly. We are not the Zorath Empire. We are not, Stone replied. We do not torture prisoners or execute the defeated. Simple statement carried weight that Thorne was beginning to understand. Humans fought with devastating effectiveness, but they also showed mercy to those who surrendered. It was a combination his people had never mastered. What will happen to me? Thorne asked. That depends partly on you, Stone replied. The Elyrian government wants you tried for war crimes. The Galactic Council is demanding answers about expansion policies. Your own empire has disavowed your actions and declared you a rogue commander. Thorne nodded grimly. He had expected as much. The Zorath Empire never admitted failure, preferring to blame individual commanders when campaigns went wrong. However, Stone continued, if you cooperate with our investigation and provide information about other Zorath military operations, we can arrange for you to be tried in human courts rather than Elyrian ones. Our justice system focuses on rehabilitation rather than revenge. The offer surprised Thorne. After destroying his fleet so thoroughly, the humans were still showing mercy to their enemy. It was a philosophy his people had never understood. Meanwhile, on Terra Prime, Ambassador Elyra stood before the rebuilt government complex, watching human engineering teams work alongside Elyrian construction crews. The damage from the Zorath attack was being repaired with shocking speed. Your people work very efficiently, she said to Alex, who had decided to extend his assignment on Terra Prime. We have experience rebuilding after wars, Alex replied. Humans learned long ago that winning a battle means nothing if you cannot win the peace that follows. The human fleet had not simply departed after their victory. Instead, they had remained in Elyrian space, helping to restore damaged infrastructure and providing security while the Confederation rebuilt its defenses. It was another surprise in a series of revelations about human nature. Director Thorne joined them, carrying reports from across Elyrian territory. The reconstruction is proceeding faster than we hoped. Human medical teams have treated over 50,000 injured civilians. Their engineers have restored power to 6 colonies that were left without energy after the attacks. And the military assistance? Elyra asked. Remarkable, Thorne replied. They are not just giving us weapons and ships. They are training our people, sharing their tactical knowledge, helping us build a real defense force for the first time in our history. The transformation was visible everywhere. Elyrian engineers worked alongside human instructors, learning advanced construction techniques. Military officers studied human battle tactics and strategic planning. Even civilian administrators attended lectures on crisis management and emergency response. But the changes went beyond mere technical assistance. The human presence had given the Elyrians something they had lost during the Zorath attack: confidence in their ability to defend themselves. Captain Miller, now serving as military liaison to the Elyrian government, addressed a gathering of Elyrian defense commanders. The key to human military success is not superior technology. It is superior commitment. When we fight with everything we have for causes we believe in completely. The Elyrian officers listened intently. Their own military tradition emphasized careful planning and measured responses. The human approach of overwhelming commitment was foreign to them, but they could not argue with its effectiveness. "But how do you maintain such unity?" asked Commander N, a veteran Elyrian officer. "Your species consists of hundreds of different governments and cultures. How did you coordinate such a massive response so quickly?" Miller smiled. "Because when innocent people call for help, political differences become irrelevant. Every human government understood that failing to respond would mean living with the knowledge that we could have saved lives, but chose not to." The concept resonated with the Elyrian officers. Their own confederation had been built on similar principles of mutual aid and shared responsibility. Perhaps they could learn to apply those same values to military defense. Across the galaxy, other species were reaching similar conclusions. The human response to the Elyrian crisis had demonstrated capabilities that no one had suspected. Intelligence agencies scrambled to reassess their estimates of human military strength. Diplomatic corps rushed to establish better relations with human governments. The Helix Collective, one of the galaxy's major powers, sent an official delegation to meet with Admiral Stone. Ambassador Zara, their chief diplomat, expressed her government's desire for closer military cooperation. "Your demonstration of capability has been impressive," she said carefully. "The collective would be interested in discussing mutual defense agreements." Stone considered the offer. "Humans are always willing to defend innocent civilians against aggression, but we are not interested in power politics or territorial expansion. If the collective shares those values, we can talk." It was becoming a pattern. Species that had previously dismissed humanity as a minor power were now eager to establish alliances. But the humans were selective, choosing partners based on shared principles rather than strategic advantage. Admiral Stone stood on the observation deck of her flagship, looking out at the human fleet as it prepared to disperse back to their home systems. The massive armada that had shocked the galaxy was breaking up into smaller formations, each returning to their normal duties. "Admiral," said Commander Davis, joining her at the viewing port, "final casualty reports are in. We lost 12 ships and 800 personnel in the battle." The numbers were remarkably low for such a massive engagement, a testament to human tactical superiority and the shock effect of their overwhelming response. Over 300 ships destroyed or disabled, an estimated 40,000 casualties. "Their fleet in this sector has been eliminated as an effective fighting force," Stone nodded, feeling the weight of command and the cost of victory. Each number represented lives lost, families destroyed, futures cut short. But she also knew that decisive action now would prevent far greater losses in the future. "Signal all ships, Commander. Mission accomplished. We are going home." As the human fleet departed Elyrian space, they left behind a galaxy that would never again underestimate the small species from the rim systems. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage, not with diplomacy or trade, but with an overwhelming demonstration of what happened when innocent people called for help.